The golden hues of a July sunset bathed the quiet streets of Decatur, Georgia, casting long dappled shadows across the tidy lawns and blooming crepe myrtles that lined the suburban neighborhood. It was the kind of evening in 2025 where the air felt heavy with summer's warmth, the hum of cicadas weaving through the soft chatter of families winding down their day. Maya Johnson, a 32-year-old schoolteacher with a gentle smile and a sharp mind, guided her weathered blue sedan along Claremont Road. Her hands rested lightly on the steering wheel, though a faint ache in her lower back reminded her of the life growing inside her. 8 months pregnant, she was accustomed to the discomfort, but her thoughts were elsewhere on the stack of ungraded essays waiting at home, the lesson plans she needed to tweak for her 5th grade class, and the ultrasound photo tucked carefully in her purse showing the delicate curve of her baby's nose. The dashboard clock glowed 7:38 p.m. Eric, her husband, would soon be home from his shift at the community center, likely carrying a bag of ribs from their favorite barbecue spot on Memorial Drive. The thought brought a flicker of warmth to Maya's chest, a small anchor in her busy day. But that warmth faded as red and blue lights flashed in her rearview mirror, sharp and insistent. Her pulse quickened, not out of fear, not yet, but from that instinctive unease that came with being noticed by authority. She eased the car to the shoulder near a small park, where a handful of children still chased each other across a playground, their laughter carrying faintly through the twilight. Maya took a slow breath, her hands smoothing over her swollen belly, as if to calm both herself and her unborn child. She'd been through this before, a broken taillight 2 years ago, a minor speeding ticket before that. Routine, she told herself, willing her heart to slow. She rolled down her window as the officer approached her badge, catching the glow of a nearby streetlight. The name tag read K. Holt. Officer Karen Holt was a white woman in her early 40s, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, her face set in a hard line that seemed to carry the weight of a long shift. Her eyes flicked over Maya, pausing briefly on her pregnant belly before meeting her gaze with a cool detachment. "Good evening, ma'am," Holt said, her voice clipped but professional. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Maya kept her hands visible on the wheel, her tone even. "No, officer, I'm not sure. Was I speeding?" She spoke carefully, each word measured a habit born from years of navigating moments like this. "Your left brake light's out," Holt replied, stepping closer to the car. "License and registration, please." Maya nodded, her movements slow and deliberate, as she reached for her purse on the passenger seat. "It's in my purse," she said, narrating her actions as she'd been taught. "I'm just getting my wallet." Her fingers brushed the ultrasound photo as she pulled out her ID, and she handed the documents to Holt, who took them without comment and walked back to her patrol car. Maya waited, the low hum of her engine blending with the distant giggles from the playground. She tried to focus on those sounds, on the normalcy of the evening, but a quiet unease began to coil in her chest as the minutes dragged on. When Holt returned, something in her demeanor had shifted, less formal, more impatient, as if the routine stop had become personal. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am," she said, her hand resting on her belt near her holster, her tone carrying an edge that made Maya's stomach tighten. "I'm sorry," Officer Maya said, keeping her voice calm despite the sudden spike in her pulse. "Is there a problem? I'm 8 months pregnant," and I said, "Step out." Holt cut into her voice, sharper now, her eyes narrowing. "You've got an expired tag, and I need to check the vehicle." Maya's mind reeled. Expired tag. She was certain Eric had renewed it last month. He was meticulous about those things, always double-checking deadlines. "There must be a mistake," she said, her tone still steady but firm. "Can you check again? I can call my husband. He handles the registration." Holt's jaw tightened, her hand still on her belt. "I don't need your husband. Get out of the car. Now. The command landed like a stone, heavy and unyielding. Maya's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay composed. She opened the door slowly, maneuvering her pregnant frame with care, her hands trembling slightly as she steadied herself against the car. The street was quieter now, the playground nearly empty as dusk deepened. Across the road, a few onlookers lingered: a teenage boy in a red hoodie, a jogger slowing her pace, a woman stepping onto her porch. Maya stood beside her sedan, her hands instinctively cradling her belly, the weight of it grounding her against the rising tide of fear. Hands where I can see them. Holt snapped, stepping closer, too close. Maya raised her hands slightly, palms open, but the sudden movement seemed to startle Holt. In an instant, her hand shot out, shoving Maya's shoulder. It wasn't a hard push, but it was enough to make Maya stumble back against the car, a sharp jolt of pain shooting through her abdomen. She gasped, her hands flying to her stomach, her breath catching as she checked for any sign of distress from her baby. "Hey!" a voice shouted from across the street. The teenage boy in the red hoodie was holding up his phone, filming now, his voice shaking but bold. "You can't do that! She's pregnant, lady!" Holt spun toward him, her face flushing red. "Mind your own business," she barked, but her voice faltered as she noticed the growing attention. The jogger had stopped entirely, her phone out now too, and the woman on the porch was calling someone. Her voice urgent. Maya's breath came in shallow bursts, her hands pressed to her belly, feeling for the familiar flutter of her baby's kicks. They were there, faint but steady, and she clung to that reassurance. She was okay. They were okay. But the fear lingered cold and heavy, mingling with a deeper hurt, a sense of being seen not as a person, but as a threat. "I'm fine," Maya said, more to herself than to Holt, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, can I sit down?" Holt hesitated, her hand still hovering near her belt, her eyes darting between Maya and the onlookers. "Stay where you are," she said, but her tone was less certain now. She reached for her radio, muttering something about backup. Her words clipped and tense. Maya's phone buzzed in her purse, but she didn't dare move for it. She focused on breathing, on the faint kicks that told her her baby was still safe. She thought of Eric, his steady voice, his warm hands, the way he always knew how to make her feel safe. He'd be home by now, wondering where she was. She needed him here, needed his calm to anchor her. Minutes later, another patrol car pulled up, its lights cutting through the gathering dusk. A second officer stepped out, a black man in his 50s, with a calm, measured presence. His badge read T. Brooks. He approached, his eyes moving from Holt to Maya, then to the teenager still filming across the street. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice even but authoritative. "She's got an expired tag," Holt said quickly, straightening. "And she was uncooperative." "That's not true," Maya said, her voice stronger now, though her hands still trembled. "I complied. She pushed me. I'm pregnant." Brooks's brow furrowed as he looked at Maya, taking in her posture, her hands cradling her belly. "Ma'am, are you hurt? Do you need a medic?" "I don't know," Maya admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "I just want to go home." Brooks nodded, turning to Holt. "I'll take it from here. Get their statements," he said, gesturing toward the onlookers. Holt's jaw clenched, but she complied, walking toward the teenager who was still filming his phone, steady despite Holt's glare. Brooks knelt beside Maya, his voice gentle. "I'm Officer Brooks. We're gonna sort this out. Okay, just focus on breathing. You're doing fine." Maya nodded, tears prickling her eyes. She wasn't injured, not in a way that showed, but the weight of the moment pressed down on her, the push, the officer's cold stare, The way it all felt so personal, so rooted in something she couldn't name but knew too well. She thought of her students, the ones she taught about fairness and respect, and wondered how she'd face them tomorrow. How she'd explain this to her child one day. As Brooks took her statement, headlights swept across the scene. Eric's gray pickup truck screeched to a stop, and he was out of the driver's seat. In an instant, his face etched with worry. "Maya," he called, rushing to her side, kneeling on the pavement. His hands hovered over her as if afraid to touch her. "Are you okay?" "The baby." "I'm okay," she whispered, gripping his hand tightly. "We're okay." Eric's eyes flicked to Holt, who was now arguing with the teenager about his phone. "What happened?" he asked, his voice low, controlled, but carrying a fire Maya knew he was holding back. Brooks stepped in, explaining the situation as Maya leaned into Eric's shoulder, drawing strength from his presence. The teenager, whose name was Jamal, approached cautiously, still holding his phone. "I got it all," he said quietly, his eyes meeting Maya's. "It's online already. People need to see this." Maya's stomach twisted. She wasn't sure she wanted to be the center of a viral video, to have her fear and vulnerability laid bare for the world. But she couldn't deny the power of it, the truth captured and shared, refusing to be ignored. As Eric helped her to her feet, she caught Holt's eye across the street. The officer looked away quickly, her expression unreadable. But Maya saw something flicker there, shame, perhaps, or defiance. It didn't matter, not yet. Brooks handed Maya her license and registration. "We'll follow up," he said. "Go home, rest. Call a doctor if you feel any pain, all right?" Maya nodded, letting Eric guide her to his truck. As they drove away, the lights of Claremont Road blurred through her tears. She thought of her baby, of the world they'd be born into, and felt a resolve take root in her chest. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about something bigger, something she wasn't sure she was ready to face, but knew she couldn't turn away from. At their small brick house, Eric sat with her on the couch, his arm around her as she recounted every detail. The ultrasound photo lay on the coffee table, a quiet reminder of what they were protecting. Outside, the cicadas sang their relentless song. And somewhere Maya knew Jamal's video was spreading a spark, igniting in a community that had been quiet for too long. She didn't know what would come next, but as she rested her head against Eric's chest, she felt the first stirrings of something stronger than fear. Hope, fragile but fierce, ready to grow. The morning light spilled through the thin curtains of Maya and Eric Johnson's modest home in Decatur, Georgia, painting soft stripes across the hardwood floor. It was the day after the incident, and Maya woke slowly, her hand resting on her belly, seeking the familiar flutter of her baby's movements. The gentle kicks were there, steady and reassuring, but they couldn't erase the restless night she'd endured, haunted by the memory of Officer Karen Holt's push and the cold weight of fear that followed. The clock on the nightstand read 7:15 a.m., and the faint clink of dishes from the kitchen told her Eric was already up, likely trying to anchor their morning with routine. Eric appeared in the doorway, his broad frame filling the space, a mug of coffee in his hand. His eyes, usually warm, carried a shadow of worry. "Morning," he said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "How are you holding up?" Maya managed a small smile, taking the mug. "Didn't sleep much. Kept seeing it, her hand, the way she looked at me." She sipped the coffee, its warmth spreading through her chest, but failing to touch the deeper chill. "Have you checked online?" Eric nodded, pulling out his phone. "Jamal's video is blowing up. Over 50,000 views already. Local news shared it. People are angry, Maya, but it's not just that. They're calling for change meetings, petitions. There's this activist, Lena Carter. She's hosting a town hall tonight at the community center." Maya's breath caught. Lena Carter's name was familiar, a beacon in Atlanta's suburbs for her work in racial justice, always pushing for dialogue over division. "Do you think we should go?" she asked, her voice hesitant. Eric took her hand, his grip steady. "Only if you feel ready. But it could be a way to take this thing and make it mean something." Maya nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. She wanted to move forward, to reclaim her sense of self, but the incident felt like a weight she couldn't yet shake. After Eric left for his shift at the community center, she called her doctor, who reassured her that as long as she felt no pain and the baby was active, there was no immediate concern. "Rest and monitor," the doctor said. "Call if anything changes." The words were meant to comfort, but they felt hollow against the emotional bruise left by Holt's actions. By midday, Maya sat on the couch, her phone buzzing with messages from friends, colleagues, and even parents of her students. "We're praying for you." Read one from her principal. "Take all the time you need." Another from a fellow teacher was blunt. "This is why I'm scared to drive at night." Each message was a reminder that her story was no longer private. It was a spark igniting conversations she hadn't anticipated. She opened social media, reluctantly finding Jamal's video pinned at the top of local pages. The comments were a mix of outrage. "Racist cop needs to go and support Maya. You're so strong." She closed the app, overwhelmed. As evening approached, the Decatur Community Center on East Ponce de Leon Avenue hummed with anticipation. The building, a modest brick structure used for everything from youth basketball to town meetings, was packed with over 100 people. Black, white, young, old, all drawn by the video and a shared desire for change. Maya and Eric arrived early, slipping into seats near the back. Maya's hands fidgeted in her lap, her belly a constant reminder of what was at stake. Eric squeezed her shoulder, his presence a quiet anchor. Lena Carter took the stage, her silver-streaked hair catching the light, her voice calm but commanding. "Thank you for being here," she began, gripping the microphone. "Last night, our neighbor Maya Johnson was pulled over for a minor issue. What should have been a routine stop turned into a moment of fear because of bias. We've seen the video. We've felt the pain. But tonight, we're here to listen, to plan, to build a community that doesn't let this happen again." The room murmured in agreement, a collective exhale of shared frustration and hope. Lena outlined her vision: peaceful advocacy, a petition for police reform and workshops to address implicit bias. "We want accountability," she said, "but we also want understanding. Change happens when we see each other as human." The floor opened to stories. A young mother shared how she'd been followed in a grocery store, assumed to be a shoplifter. An older black man recounted a traffic stop where his politeness was met with suspicion. Each story was a thread in a larger tapestry, and Maya felt both isolated and connected. Her experience was unique, yet painfully familiar. When Lena called for volunteers, Eric nudged her gently. Maya stood, her heart pounding. "I'm Maya," she said, her voice wavering at first, but growing steadier. "What happened to me wasn't just about a push. It was the way I felt small, unsafe, like I didn't matter. I'm scared for my baby, for the world they'll grow up in. I don't want revenge. I want change." The applause was warm, enveloping. Lena approached afterward, her smile genuine. "Maya, you're brave for speaking. I'd love to work with you, press conferences, meetings with the city." "Are you in, Maya?" Glanced at Eric, who nodded. "Yes," she said, "I'm in." Back home, Maya felt a flicker of empowerment, but doubts lingered. What if this made her a target? What if it didn't change anything? Eric held her as they sat on the couch, the ultrasound photo on the coffee table. "You're not alone," he said. "We've got Lena, the community. We've got us." Across town, in a small apartment near the Decatur police station, Officer Karen Holt sat at her kitchen table, her phone screen glowing with notifications. The video had surpassed 150,000 views, shared by local news and activists alike. Comments stung, fire her, "She's a disgrace." That morning, her captain David Reynolds had summoned her for a review. In his office, the video played on a loop, each frame a silent accusation. "This is bad," Karen Reynolds said, his voice gruff, pushing a pregnant woman on camera. "Explain yourself." Karen's throat tightened. She was uncooperative. "I felt threatened." Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "Threatened by a schoolteacher? This screams bias." "Holt, you're suspended pending investigation. Mandatory sensitivity training starts next week." Karen left the meeting, shaking her badge, feeling like a weight she wasn't sure she deserved to carry. She wasn't a villain. She'd joined the force to serve, inspired by her father's stories of community policing in rural Georgia. But the job had changed her, or maybe it had revealed something she hadn't wanted to see. The push wasn't violent, not in the way that drew blood, but it came from a place she couldn't defend: fear, assumption, prejudice. Alone in her apartment, she wondered if she could unlearn it. The next morning, Daniel Ruiz, a reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, knocked on Maya's door. A Latino man in his mid-30s with a quick smile and a notebook, he'd been drawn to the story by its viral spread. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm Daniel. I'd like to hear your side if you're comfortable." Maya invited him in, Eric joining them at the kitchen table. Over tea, she shared her story, her voice steady but raw. "It wasn't just the push," she said. "It was how she saw me, not as a person, but as a problem. I keep thinking about my students, how I teach them fairness. How do I explain this?" Daniel nodded, scribbling notes. "I've heard similar stories. Can I investigate further?" "Talk to others, dig into the department." "Please," Maya said, "if it helps stop this from happening again." Daniel spent days chasing leads. He met Jamal, the teenager who'd filmed the incident at a local park. "I was scared," Jamal admitted, kicking a pebble. "But filming, it's power. It's proof." Daniel interviewed Officer Brooks off the record, who sighed, "We've got good cops, but the system's broken." Training's a start, but it's not enough. Digging through public records, Daniel found patterns. Black drivers in Decatur were stopped at twice the rate of white drivers, with complaints often dismissed. He reached out to Holt, expecting resistance, but she agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop near Avondale Estates. "Why talk to me?" Daniel asked, recorder on the table. Karen stirred her coffee, her eyes tired. "Because I'm not what they're calling me. I messed up, I know that. But I'm under pressure, quotas, tense shifts. The job changes you. I want to do better." Her honesty surprised him. It didn't excuse her actions, but it added depth to the story. Daniel's article, published online that evening, wove together Maya's pain, the community's response, Holt's accountability, and the systemic issues at play. "This isn't about one officer," he wrote. "It's about a system that lets bias fester unchecked." The article amplified the movement. Lena organized another meeting, this time with city council members in attendance. Maya spoke again, her voice stronger, joined by other women who'd faced similar treatment. They formed a small network, sharing stories and strength. Eric juggled work and home, ensuring Maya rested his quiet support, unwavering. "You're changing things," he told her one night, his voice proud. But the weight remained. Maya dreamed of flashing lights of hands reaching for her. She confided in Lena, who nodded knowingly. "Activism hurts," Lena said, "but it heals too." "You're building something, Maya." As the weeks unfolded, the pressure on the police department grew. Protests stayed peaceful, focused on dialogue. Holt, in mandatory therapy, began confronting her biases, childhood lessons about certain neighborhoods, media stereotypes, the job's relentless stress. It was slow, painful work, but it stirred something in her, a desire to change. One evening, Daniel called Maya. The department's announcing reforms, better training a community oversight board. Your story pushed this, Maya. Tears pricked her eyes. It wasn't justice, not fully, but it was a step. As she hung up, feeling her baby's strong kicks, she whispered, "This is for you." The community was rallying, turning pain into purpose, and Maya felt herself growing stronger, ready to face what came next. The late August sun sank slowly over Decatur, Georgia, casting a warm golden light across the tidy lawns and blooming crepe myrtles that lined the suburban streets. Maya Johnson sat on the front porch of her small brick home, a glass of iced tea in her hand, the condensation dripping onto the wicker table beside her. Her belly, heavy with the final days of pregnancy, was a constant reminder of the life she and Eric were about to welcome. A month had passed since the incident with Officer Karen Holt, a moment that had shaken her to her core, but also ignited a fire in her community. The viral video, Daniel Ruiz's relentless reporting, and Lena Carter's unwavering advocacy had transformed her personal trauma into a collective push for justice. Tonight, that push would find its voice at a unity event at the Decatur Community Center, a gathering designed to celebrate progress and lay the groundwork for a better future. Eric stepped onto the porch, a dish towel slung over his shoulder, his dark eyes scanning her with the quiet concern that had become his hallmark. "You sure you're up for this?" he asked, leaning against the railing. "It's gonna be packed lots of eyes on you." Maya set her glass down, her hand resting on her belly as she felt a gentle kick. "I need to be there," she said, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves. "Not just for us, but for her. This is about the world she'll grow up in." She smiled faintly, imagining their daughter's face, already so clear in her mind from the ultrasound photo tucked in her purse. Eric nodded, his expression softening. "All right, let's do this together." He reached for her hand, his touch a lifeline, as it had been through every step of this journey. The Decatur Community Center was a hive of energy when they arrived, its brick facade glowing under strings of fairy lights strung across the parking lot. Inside, the air was thick with the aromas of local cuisine, smoky barbecue ribs from a beloved joint on Memorial Drive, heaps of collard greens glistening with ham hock, buttery cornbread, and pitchers of sweet tea that glistened in the light. Tables lined the room, each one crowded with neighbors, activists, and city officials mingling in a rare moment of shared purpose. A small stage stood at the front, adorned with a banner that read, "Unity in Decatur," in bold, hopeful letters. Lena Carter moved through the crowd with effortless grace, her silver-streaked hair catching the light, her warm smile putting everyone at ease, whether they were council members in pressed suits or teenagers in hoodies. She greeted Maya with a hug, her eyes shining with pride. "You're here," Lena said. "That means more than you know." Maya and Eric found seats near the front, joined by Daniel Ruiz, who'd set aside his reporter's notebook for a plate piled high with food. "This is big," he said, his voice low but excited. "The city's announcing the oversight board tonight. Your story lit the match, Maya." She shook her head, uncomfortable with the spotlight. "It wasn't just me. Jamal's video, your articles, Lena's work, it's all of us." Daniel grinned, wiping sauce from his fingers. "Sure, but you gave it a face, a heart. That's what pulls people in." As the event began, Lena took the stage, her presence commanding silence without effort. "Thank you for being here," she said, her voice steady over the microphone. "A month ago, Maya Johnson faced an injustice that could have broken us apart. Instead, We chose to come together. We've demanded accountability, and we're seeing results. But tonight isn't just about policies, it's about building a Decatur where every neighbor feels safe, valued, and heard. The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of sound that warmed Maya's chest. Lena introduced Mayor Susan Grant, a white woman in her 50s, whose cautious demeanor had softened over the past weeks. "The city of Decatur is listening," Grant said, her voice earnest. "Thanks to your advocacy, we're launching a civilian oversight board to review police conduct. We're expanding implicit bias training, hiring community liaisons to bridge gaps, and piloting a mentorship program to pair officers with local leaders. This is our commitment to you." Cheers rose, though some in the audience clapped more cautiously, their faces etched with the skepticism of those who'd heard promises before. Maya understood their hesitation. Words were easy, but trust was earned through action. Yet, as she looked around at families sharing plates, at children darting between tables, at neighbors exchanging nods of solidarity, she felt a spark of hope. This wasn't a solution, but it was a foundation, a step toward a world where her daughter could thrive. Lena opened the floor to the community, inviting voices to share their visions for Decatur. A young black barber spoke passionately about starting a mentorship program for teens, teaching them skills and confidence. A white retiree, her voice quivering with emotion, proposed monthly town halls to keep the conversation alive. When Maya's turn came, she hesitated, her heart pounding, but Eric's gentle nod pushed her to her feet. "I'm Maya," she said, her voice clear, despite the tremor in her hands. "What happened to me wasn't just about a push. It was about feeling invisible, unsafe in my own community. I'm scared for my daughter, for the world she'll inherit. But being here, seeing all of you, I believe we can change that. It starts with listening, with holding each other accountable, with choosing empathy over fear." The applause was warm, wrapping around her like a blanket. Lena caught her eye as she sat mouthing, "You're incredible." The event shifted to lighter moments. A local jazz band struck up a soulful tune, and laughter mingled with the clink of glasses. Maya found Jamal near the dessert table, his plate piled with peach cobbler. "You changed things," she told him, gripping his shoulder. "That video, it woke people up." Jamal shrugged, his shy smile breaking through. "I just hit record." "You're the one who kept going, Ms. Johnson." Across town, in a small conference room at the Decatur police station, Officer Karen Holt sat through her final session of mandatory sensitivity training. The past month had been a crucible: suspension, public vilification, and a gnawing guilt that kept her awake at night. The online comments were merciless: "Racist cop. She should be fired." Her colleagues had distanced themselves, and Captain Reynolds had been blunt. "You've got one chance to fix this, Holt." The training, led by Dr. Maria Ellis, a psychologist with a knack for cutting through defensiveness, had forced Karen to confront truths she'd avoided for years. "Bias lives in the assumptions we don't question." Dr. Ellis said, her voice calm but incisive. "It's in the split-second decisions that shape lives." Karen had resisted at first, insisting she wasn't that kind of person. But the sessions peeled back layers: childhood lessons in her small Georgia town, where us and them were unspoken but clear. Media images that painted certain faces as threats. The job's relentless pressure to act fast, assume danger. The push against Maya wasn't violent in the way that draws blood, but it came from a place Karen couldn't defend. Fear, prejudice, a failure to see a person. She'd met Daniel Ruiz again off the record, her voice breaking as she admitted, "I saw a threat, not a mother. I was wrong." Reinstated on probation, Karen faced a choice: retreat into bitterness or lean into change. She chose the latter, signing up for a voluntary community outreach program, hoping to rebuild trust, one step at a time. That night she attended the Unity event, standing quietly at the back, in civilian clothes, her badge left at home. When Maya spoke, Karen felt a pang guilt. Yes, but also a spark of hope. This woman whom she'd wronged was building something bigger than either of them. 3 days later, Maya's life changed forever. In the early hours, her water broke, and Eric rushed her to Emory Decatur Hospital. After a long, intense labor, their daughter Amara was born 7 pounds, with a fierce cry that filled the room with life. Maya held her tears streaming down her face as Eric kissed her forehead, his voice thick with awe. "She's perfect, Maya. Just like you." The hospital room became a haven filled with the soft sounds of Amara's coos and the quiet joy of new parenthood. Lena visited, bringing a hand-knit blanket, her eyes shining as she held the baby. "This little one's got a warrior for a mom," she said, her voice warm. Daniel stopped by, too, snapping a photo of the family with their permission, promising to keep it private. "You're a story of hope now," he told Maya, his smile genuine. Back home, Maya and Eric navigated the whirlwind of parenthood, sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and the overwhelming love that made every moment worth it. The community's momentum held strong. The Civilian Oversight Board held its first meeting with Lena and Jamal's mother. Among the members, their voices ensuring accountability wasn't just a promise. Daniel's reporting evolved into a series on community policing, featuring Officer Brooks and others working to rebuild trust. He interviewed Karen, who spoke candidly about her training, earning cautious respect from readers who saw her effort to change. Maya returned to her classroom, her 5th graders greeting her with hugs and questions about the baby. She wove lessons of empathy into every subject, teaching her students to see the world through others' eyes. She invited Lena to speak, and the kids listened rapt as Lena shared stories of justice and resilience. "You can change things," she told them. "Start with kindness, with listening." Their questions: why do people judge? How do we make it fair? Echoed in Maya's heart, a vision of the world she wanted for Amara. One afternoon, a letter arrived at the school, hand-delivered and addressed to Maya. It was from Karen Holt. "Dear Mrs. Johnson," it began, "I owe you more than words can say. What I did was wrong, rooted in biases. I'm working every day to unlearn. I'm committed to being better for your daughter, for Decatur, for myself. I hope one day you can forgive me." It was signed simply Karen. Maya read it slowly, her emotions a tangle of hurt anger and something softer, hope, perhaps. Forgiveness wasn't immediate, but the letter was a gesture she hadn't expected. She showed it to Eric, who read it in silence, then nodded. "She's trying," he said. That's a start. The story of that summer didn't end with a perfect world. Systemic issues lingered, trust remained fragile, and Maya still tensed at the sight of police lights. But it ended with progress, a community that refused to stay silent. A mother who found her voice, a daughter born into a world being shaped for the better. Lena's workshops grew training officers and residents in de-escalation and understanding, fostering conversations that bridged divides. Jamal started a youth media club, teaching kids to use their phones as tools for truth, empowering a new generation to speak out. Karen volunteered at community events, listening more than speaking, her journey of growth, a quiet testament to the power of accountability. The lesson was clear, woven through every moment of this journey. Change begins with empathy, with seeing each other as human, not as threats or stereotypes. It's slow, messy work, requiring courage to confront mistakes and commitment to build something better. Maya saw it in the unity events, shared laughter, in the bonds formed over shared meals, in the fierce love she felt for Amara. She felt it in the quiet moments with Eric dreaming of a world where their daughter could thrive without fear. One crisp September evening, Maya stood on her porch, Amara asleep in her arms, the soft weight of her daughter grounding her. The cicadas had faded, replaced by the rustle of autumn leaves. Across the street, neighbors waved their smiles, a small victory, a sign of the community they'd built together. Maya looked down at Amara, her tiny face peaceful, and whispered, "We're making it better for you, baby. We're trying." In that promise, she found hope not perfect, not complete, but real, resilient, and enough to carry them forward into a future they were shaping one step at a time.